The invitation arrived as a simple calendar notification on a Tuesday afternoon. Family dinner at the house, Sunday 6 p.m. Topic: Mom's estate and future planning. My brother Julian had even added a little wine glass icon next to the title. To anyone else, it looked like a responsible, middle-aged man organizing a necessary transition after our mother's stroke. To me, it looked like a digital subpoena. I sat at my desk in the city, the blue light of my monitor reflecting in my glasses, and felt the familiar cold prickle of adrenaline at the base of my spine. I knew exactly what that dinner was. It wasn't about Mom's comfort or her physical therapy schedule. It was about the $3 million in equity sitting in her Kensington brownstone and the fact that I was the only person standing between Julian and the liquidation of our family's history. I am 29 years old. In my family, that has always been translated as the baby, or the one who doesn't quite understand how the world works. Julian is 40. He has a wife, 2 kids in private school, and a lifestyle that requires a constant infusion of cash he doesn't actually earn. He views my career in data forensics as a cute hobby, and my quiet nature as a sign of submission. He has spent the last 6 months treating me like a spectator in my own life. But Julian forgets one thing. I don't just look at data. I look at the stories people tell when they think no one is watching the logs. I didn't reply to the invite immediately. I let it sit for 4 hours. Silence is a tool, and I've learned to use it well. When I finally clicked accept, I did so while looking at a folder on my desktop labeled Audit Trail. Inside were the artifacts of a betrayal that had been unfolding for 90 days. It started with a small notification from my mother's bank, an alert for a password reset that she, in her current cognitive state, could never have initiated. Then, it was the subtle changes in her medical records, notes from a doctor I didn't recognize, suggesting she was incapable of managing her own affairs, and recommending Julian as her sole conservator. The drive to the house on Sunday was gray and drizzly, the kind of London evening that feels heavy with unspoken things. I parked my car 3 blocks away. I didn't want them to hear me arrive. I wanted to walk in while they were already in the rhythm of their performance. As I approached the heavy oak door of the house I grew up in, I saw the blue flicker of the Ring camera. I knew Julian was watching the feed on his phone. I straightened my coat, took a deep breath, and let my face go perfectly neutral. I wasn't there to fight. I was there to witness. The house smelled like expensive candles, and the medicinal tang of the antiseptic wipes the nurses used for Mom upstairs. Julian was in the kitchen, pouring a heavy Cabernet. His wife, Sarah, was setting the table with the good silver. It was a tableau of domestic stability, a stage set designed to make me feel like the outsider, the guest who needed to be managed. "Clara, darling, you look tired," Sarah said, stepping forward to give me a dry, perfunctory hug. "Work must be draining. You really should take some time off once we get everything settled here." "I'm fine, Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady. "Where's Mom?" "Sleeping," Julian intervened, handing me a glass of wine I didn't intend to drink. "The new medication has her quite out of it. It's for the best, really. She gets so agitated when we talk about the house. It's better she rests while we handle the heavy lifting." We sat down to dinner. The food was excellent, which made the underlying tension even more grotesque. For 30 minutes, they talked about their children's rowing schedules and the rising cost of utilities. Then, with the precision of a scripted play, Julian cleared his throat and pulled a thick manila envelope from under his chair. He laid it on the table between the salt cellar and the butter dish. "So," he began, his tone shifting into that condescending Big Brother register. "We've had some specialists look at the long-term care costs. It's staggering, Clara. If we want Mom to have the best, and we do, we have to be realistic. This house is a liability. It's too big. The maintenance is killing her accounts, and frankly, she'll never walk these stairs again. I've had an offer, an off-market developer. They'll take it as is, cash, no inspections. It's more than enough to put her in that luxury facility in Surrey and leave a healthy cushion for our future. He pushed a document toward me. It was a power of attorney form, already signed by Mom. A shaky, jagged scrawl that looked nothing like her elegant cursive, and a sales agreement for the house at a price that was easily 40% below market value. "I just need your signature as a witness for the supplementary filings," Julian said, offering me a pen. "The lawyers say it's better if we're both on the same page. It shows unity. It prevents any probate delays later on." I didn't take the pen. I didn't even look at the document. I looked at Julian. I watched the way his eyes darted to his phone on the table, then back to me. He was sweating slightly. He needed this. He needed the cash injection to cover whatever hole he'd dug for himself, and he needed it before the end of the fiscal quarter. "Who is the buyer, Julian?" I asked quietly. "A holding company. Bluestone Assets." "It's standard for these kinds of quick sales," he replied, dismissing the question with a wave of his hand. "And who owns Bluestone Assets?" I asked. The room went very still. Sarah stopped mid-chew. Julian's smile didn't falter, but his eyes hardened. "I don't see why that matters. The price is fair and the timing is perfect. It matters because Bluestone Assets was registered 6 weeks ago to a registered agent in the Cayman Islands whose primary contact email is your business address, Julian," I said. The words were measured, devoid of any heat. "You aren't selling the house to pay for Mom's care. You're selling the house to yourself at a massive discount, using Mom's own funds to facilitate the transfer, so you can flip it in 6 months and cut me and her care fund out of the equation entirely." Julian laughed. It was a sharp, brittle sound. "Clara, you've always had an overactive imagination. That's why you're so good with your little computer puzzles. But this is the real world. This is about Mom's survival." "Is it?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a small stack of papers. They weren't legal documents. They were logs. 3 weeks ago, someone logged into Mom's investment account from an IP address assigned to your home office. They moved £60,000 into an escrow account. 2 days later, a request was sent to the land registry to change the title status based on a medical certification of incapacity. I took the liberty of calling Dr. Aris, the doctor who supposedly signed that certification. He doesn't exist, Julian. Or rather, he exists. But he's a retired pediatrician in Cornwall who has never met our mother. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah looked at the floor. Julian's face turned a deep, mottled red. He wasn't the big brother anymore. He was a cornered animal. "You've been spying on me?" he hissed, leaning across the table. "You think you can just come into my house after everything I've done to manage this family and accuse me of fraud? I am the executor. I have the legal standing. You're just a girl with a laptop who doesn't like how things are being handled." "I'm not spying, Julian. I'm the co-trustee," I reminded him. "I became the co-trustee 5 years ago when Mom was still healthy. She knew your spending habits. She knew you'd eventually look at her assets as a safety net. She asked me to keep the keys to the digital kingdom. I didn't want to believe she was right. I wanted to think you loved her more than you loved your lifestyle. But the logs don't lie." "People do." I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The power in the room had shifted entirely. "I've already filed a suspicious activity report with the bank," I said. "The escrow funds have been frozen. I've also sent the forged medical certification to the Solicitors Regulation Authority. They'll be looking into whoever helped you draft these legal documents. I imagine your friend at the firm won't be very happy about that." Julian stood up too, knocking his chair back. "You're destroying this family, Clara. You're going to put me in jail? Over a house? Over Mom's money?" "No," I said, walking toward the door. "You did that yourself. I'm just the one who documented it. I'm moving Mom to a private clinic tomorrow morning, a place where her new medication can be properly evaluated by actual doctors. And I've already changed the locks on the Kensington house. The Ring camera you were watching earlier? I took over the admin rights an hour ago. I saw you and Sarah discussing the Bluestone plan in the hallway before I walked in. I have the audio, Julian. I have you explaining exactly how you were going to lie to me." Sarah began to cry, a soft, pathetic sound. Julian just stood there, his hands shaking. He looked small. For the first time in my life, I realized he was never the strong one. He was just the loudest. "What do you want?" he whispered. "I want you to step down," I said. "I want a full, notarized renunciation of your position as executor and trustee. I want the £60,000 returned to Mom's account by noon tomorrow. And I want you to stay away from her. If you try to interfere, if you try to contest the trust, I will hand over the forensic drive to the police. This isn't a negotiation, Julian. It's a courtesy. I'm giving you a chance to walk away before the lawyers turn this into a crime scene." I didn't wait for him to answer. I walked out of the kitchen, down the hallway, and out the front door. The cool night air felt like a benediction. I got into my car and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I wasn't shaking. I felt a profound sense of clarity. The following weeks were a blur of legal filings and logistical shifts. I moved my mother to a beautiful, light-filled facility where the staff spoke to her with dignity. Within 10 days of being off the medication, Julian had arranged she was awake. She was frail, and her speech was slow, but she was there. When I told her Julian wouldn't be visiting for a while, she didn't ask why. She just squeezed my hand and looked at me with a gaze that said she already knew. She had always known. Julian tried to call me once. He sounded broken, complaining that his bank accounts were being audited and that Sarah was leaving him. I listened for exactly 30 seconds before I hung up. I didn't feel joy at his ruin. I just felt the satisfaction of a closed loop. The data had been reconciled. The error had been corrected. I went back to the Kensington house a month later to pack up some of Mom's personal items. The house was quiet, no longer a battlefield, just a building filled with memories. I stood in the drawing room, looking at the faded wallpaper and the old piano. Julian had seen this place as a series of numbers, a way to pay off a debt or buy a faster car. I saw it as the place where I learned to be quiet, to watch, and to wait. I sat down at the mahogany desk in the corner, the desk where Mom used to pay the bills and write her letters. I opened my laptop and checked the trust accounts. Everything was secure. The alerts were silent. The integrity of the system had been restored. It's a strange thing, being the one who is underestimated. People tell you their secrets because they don't think you're listening. They leave their digital footprints all over your life because they don't think you know how to track them. They mistake your calm for weakness and your silence for consent. I looked at the Ring camera notification on my phone. A delivery driver was leaving a package at the front door. The system was working. The perimeter was secure. I closed my laptop, locked the heavy oak door, and walked away. I wasn't the baby of the family anymore. I was the guardian. And for the first time in 29 years, I knew exactly what that was worth. The victory wasn't in the money or the house. It was in the fact that when the world tried to rewrite the truth, I had the logs to prove what was real. Julian would spend the next decade trying to rebuild his reputation, haunted by the shadow of what he had tried to do. I would spend it ensuring that the person who raised me could age with the peace she deserved. As I drove away, the city lights beginning to blur in the evening rain, I felt a sense of power that was quiet and absolute. I didn't need to shout to be heard. I didn't need to be aggressive to be strong. I just needed to be right. And in the end, that was more than enough. Would you like me to draft a follow-up scene where Clara confronts Julian's legal team with the final evidence?